Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another talk and Korea video. Teach and learn in Korea and a Korea video. You all know what it's all about. It's about my experiences in South Korea and everything that happened. And as I was saying, we are going to focus a bit more on the talk side of things with the scholars, the fellow scholars that we got to meet and everything. I'm going to try and edit these photos because I don't want to show their faces. I'm going to try and blur them out. I hope I can succeed in this. Otherwise, I'm going to make another video where I just have to explain to you what happened and you won't know what I'm talking about. So, one of our first excursions actually was in Busan as the group. Now, what happened was with TaLK is you get put into a class with other scholars, and from that class, the scholars would go to their respective provinces, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you would be together in the same province. It would probably mean that you're in different, like, it would most likely mean you're going all over the country. We had one of the guys, Hyuk. He was somewhere in the northern part of South Korea, like on his own and everything. And I was like way at the southern part. And then there was another guy, crud, what's his name? Kendall? Yeah. He was also further down south in South Korea. So, like, we weren't really, it was the same class, but we were spread out. And even the people in my group, I didn't get to hang out much in my province. I got to hang out with them quite a bit, but it was difficult because I didn't, like, I got along with most of them, but, I was a guy on my own doing my own thing, so it was kind of difficult to get myself to hang out with them, and I never really communicate. Even if you know me now, even on WhatsApp and whatnot, I've got groups, family groups, that I maybe post once. If I post once a month on that WhatsApp family group, it's a lot, It doesn't really happen. So that's the thing. I'm more of a guy of like, hey, let's run into each other and then we'll meet up and connect. So, and if people were to invite me to events at that stage, now I just invite people, but at that stage, I was still in the mindset of like, you know what, let me be invited. Kind of a dick move from my side, I know, but that's how things are going. That's how things went at that stage. So it was very, like I said, one of the things I learned in South Korea is just do things on your own, just freaking organize stuff and all of that. And just like go out and plan things. If you don't do it, nobody else will do it for you. And I was like, up until I went to Korea, I was still in my time in Korea, I was of that mindset, unfortunately, And I guess if the friends that I've met there, if the people I've met there knew how I felt, I would have probably been invited to more and more things. Okay, and it doesn't help that I was another thing that didn't count in my favor is I was a very, what do you call it? I wasn't grumpy, but I was a very difficult person to get along with in Korea. And Korea broke that away from me, I grew from that. But while my time in Korea, I was a very difficult person to get along with. This is some bit of introspection right here. If we were to walk somewhere, I'd be hating every minute of it, I'd enjoy the sights and everything, but I'd be hating every minute of it because I'm sweating and I'm comfortable, I'm fat, I didn't like it. I didn't like exerting myself too much. And in Korea, you exert yourself quite a lot. You walk around quite a lot. And I was like, ugh. Maybe if I was like 25 while I was in Korea, or maybe even 24 while I was in Korea, I would be like, yeah, let's do this. Me. But man, not at this age, But I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed every minute of getting to hang out with these people. And one of our first things, let me see if I can find that photo first. Let me see if I can find that one first. One of our first outings was actually, and this is going to be a difficult one to blur out, so I'm going to try my best, right? One of our first outings, like I said, I'm going to blur it out, was in, where was that? It was where the Cherry Festival was held. Hold on. Oh, it doesn't even say. It was where the Cherry Festival, one parts of where the Cherry Blossom Festivals were held. And that was our first outings. Lots and lots of walking around. You can see me way back there. Right there. Now my finger's going to disappear. Right back there. You'll see my face, but I'll probably blur out everything. But I'm in there. Yeah, that was one of our first outings. And that's when I realized, holy shit, I hate walking. I really hate walking. I believe, let's just confirm, that was on April, and this was in, that was one of our first outings to an event. Before that outing, we went to Busan and got to hang out with a bunch of beautiful people. Oh, wow, now that thing is so small. With a bunch of beautiful people. Probably with a bunch of beautiful people. You'll see me there in the background. Next to me stands, and obviously there will be blurred. Next to me is Hyuk, and next to him, Cheryl. And she was really, really pretty. She probably still is pretty, But we had a fun time on Hendae Beach in Busan. And let's go see here. Okay, so I'm going to do it the other way around, right? I'm going to do it the other way around. So we were heading this one day. You see my ugly face there. I don't even know the guy next to me, but this one day we went out to Seoul to celebrate someone's birthday. I don't even really remember whose birthday it was. We went out to Seoul. And one of the friends that I made, now here's the actual story I want to tell about, but there's the proof that we went on to a birthday thing in Seoul. And this was about May. This was about 2 to 3 months after. This was about 2 to 3 months after we finished our TaLK thing. So I'm walking in Seoul Station. I think it was at the bus terminal, if I'm correct. Was it the bus terminal? Yes, it was a bus terminal. And one of my friends, now this guy's name is Ian. You won't see his face. It's blurred out, hopefully. But one of this guy, great close friend I've made during my orientation. And I'm like, you know what? I'd like to hang out with him a bit more. And we eventually did get to hang out a few times. Not as much as I'd like, but we did get to hang out a few times. And yeah, I'm getting off the bus terminal, walking around, and I see this ginger guy, and I'm like, Ian? And it's like, holy balls, and it's like, you know what, let's greet. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, what are you doing here? No, he's visiting someone. I think it was a girlfriend or something of his, or he's meeting up with a girlfriend of his. I'm like, I'm going for a birthday party. And meeting up randomly in stations was a common occurrence in Korea. But this one stuck out, This one completely stuck out. I'm like, holy balls. One of the closest friends I made. One of the first friends, and then eventually one of the closest friends I made in South Korea. He's a Canadian. When he left, I remember he was leaving. I think his story comes up later. So I'm gonna talk about him. It's gonna be a two-parter video. So this is where I met this guy, and I'm like, holy balls, long time no see. 3 months is a long time in South Korea, or feels like a long time in South Korea. And then we've got, this is again in backwards order, completely backwards order. This was the nighttime on Wando. Wando? Is it Wando? Wando. The guy in the middle, which is blurred out, is also like, he was living there, so we crashed at him, and it was a massive party. It was like 6 or 7 of us, or maybe even 10 of us, crashing at his place for the evening, and we basically, you know, hiked the beach. We had, what was it called, sand mites eating us up and everything. It was freaking crazy. But I want to tell you a story about this particular trip. Let's see here about this particular trip. Right, I'm going to try and blur out a couple of things. And through the magic of jump cuts, I'll be right back. Well, this is embarrassing. I couldn't find it in good enough time. Maybe if I find it, I'll show it to you in the future. Because I know I put it away because I didn't want to lose it. So when I left to South Korea, way before I left for South Korea, I was in the lucky position to have 3 grandmothers, and one of my grandmothers passed away, and she gave me, like, her sister, my aunt, or her daughter, my aunt, gave me her ring, her wedding band, right? And I put it on a chain around my neck. And before I left for Korea, my mom gave me her wedding band. And it fit nicely into my grandmother's wedding band, you know? So I had that thing around my neck at the time that we were playing volleyball with, I believe it was a wrestling team that we played volleyball with, and you see me there in the orange shirt, or the less blurry part is the orange shirt. It was quite cool, you know, and we had a lot of fun and everything. And after that match, we walked for like 10 minutes, and something tells me just to feel for this chain. I need to, this is going to bother me. I'm probably going to go search for it after this video. Feel for this chain. And I'm like, oh, it's gone. And I looked at my fellow TaLK colleagues and I'm like, listen, guys, you guys go on ahead. I'm going to go back and find this. Now, this is the beach. So I'm sitting there and I'm walking back and I'm looking for landmarks. I'm like, okay, cool. Across this building, this is where we played volleyball. And I start looking around, and there's a bunch of other Koreans also working there. And I look around and I'm like, you know, feeling in the sand and everything. And I'm sitting there going, oh God, oh God, oh God, please, 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 please. I need this. This is my one thing that I can't lose in South Korea. I can't lose it in South Korea. And I'm looking and I'm looking. I'm spending for 10, 20 minutes where I'm like taking my shoes off. Well, I was barefoot basically, and stepping into the sand, pushing my fingers into the sand, digging a bit and walking around. And like 2 or 3 Koreans come like while they're playing volleyball, and they're like, oh, and they're all uncomfortable because they're trying to speak English. And I'm trying to speak broken Korean, and I'm like, and the one guy comes up and he's like, oh, need help? What are you looking for? And I'm like, oh, and I'm like explaining, it's a necklace. It's a necklace, 2 rings inside of each other, 2 rings inside of each other. And I'm explaining. And he looks to them and he says something in Korean. They're like, oh, and they start going in. These 3 or 4 Koreans start going in and they start digging around. Before I knew it, there was like 15 Koreans around me. Like more than 10 Koreans around me digging in the sand looking for this. And they're like, oh, and they're like, no, that's not it. And we try and search. And there's one guy, he's like, and I hear this Korean exclaiming something in Korean. And the English guy's like, they found it. The English Korean guy, like, you know, they're like, found it. We found it. And I turn around and I run towards him, tears streaming down my face. He's holding this thing covered in sand, tears streaming down my face, and I just hug him. And I'm like, oh, kamsamnida. And I turn to the English guy, the Korean guy that can't understand English, and I'm like, my mother and grandmother ring. Wedding ring. And he turns to them and he says this, and they're like, oh. And I look at them, I'm like, listen, let's go to the shop. I'm going to buy you all some cool drinks. And they're like, no, Quinchana. I'm like, come on. He's like, oh, Quinchana. And they're like, no, they were just happy to help and they moved on. And that was my experience on that beach during that day. And I was freaking out. This was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was getting dark and everything. And I was freaking the hell out, right? But we finally got it. We find a random spot on the beach. I finally meet up with my friends, my TaLK colleagues. We find a random spot on the beach. We make a bonfire. And as you've seen in the previous one, I believe, we fired off some fireworks and whatnot. So it's like, literally, and that last video was us just relaxing next to the fire. And me being, But this was me, sweat between my legs. I've been chafed. I'm fed up. Unfortunately, I wasn't the best of people to hang around with when we walk around. Now I would be, but back then I wasn't. I was a very grumpy old man. And that was part 1 of the random meets. In part 2, we are going to meet up again with a friend that I met up in South Korea, that I met up at the bus that I spoke about today. In part 2, we're going to do that. My short and interesting visit to South Africa, and some more adventures in and around Korea with regards to TaLK and non-TaLK people. And then after that, we're probably going to aim towards my experiences with the first big holiday that I've taken. But thank you everybody for watching. I hope I can edit this video. Thank you everybody for watching this, my TaLK in Korean experience, TaLK and Korea experience. And I hope you have an awesome day. And until the next video, you should have a good one.